Okay. Hello and welcome, guys. Welcome to the webinar. We are just going to take 30 seconds or so while people are still joining, but we will get started in just a moment.
Hello, everyone. I see some names.
Some familiar names.
Yes.
By all means, say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from if we don't know you. Okay, I think as people are still joining, we can make a bit of a start. So a couple of house rules. If you've not joined one of these webinars before, then of course we want them to be engaging. We want you to be involved. We want you to ask questions, react, ask us questions, respond to the polls. So please do engage. If you're new to Livestorm, you've got an array of buttons on the toolbar beneath. So feel free to speak out and we'll try and answer any questions that come into the chat throughout the session as well. Cool. So subject of today, GitOps and Kafka, specifically focusing on streamlining access management with the console API. While you may already be equipped with GitOps for things like topic creation, today we really want to focus on what you might be missing, something missing regarding tooling and access management specifically. So to put some context to the need for GitOps, we're going to explain this in terms of like your Kafka journey. And what that might look like is when you start at the beginning with Kafka and the scope is small and you need to onboard your first project team and what that process might look like. At this stage, you're probably not thinking about GitOps. Some of you may, in which case that's awesome. Interested to hear what you have to say about that. But really you're talking about just trying to get running in production, trying to prove out the value and nothing more. So GitOps is less of a concern at this point. But then as Kafka becomes more critical and you go up that maturity curve, so does the number of teams, the number of projects that you might need to onboard as well. And at this stage, if you're a platform admin, you might start to be inundated with requests and you start to wonder maybe there's a more efficient way of managing that big influx of requests. Hello, everyone joining. Say hello in the chat. And then at the end, what we want to focus on is almost a totally different way of looking at this as well, access management, a totally different strategy, whereby maybe you're part of a large organization and you want to shift some of that responsibility away from a central platform team or a platform administrator onto project teams to self-serve, unlocking developer autonomy. Now, that is not something that necessarily has to come way up that maturity curve. That's something you could be thinking about much earlier. So this is not necessarily the linear view that the image suggests, but we think it tells a nice story. It shows, the stages you're likely to encounter. So yeah, let's get into it. And I think to start us off, I think we've got a quick poll because we want to get a feeling for where everyone is in terms of this journey. So I'm just going to submit this into the chat. Are you using a GitOps solution for Kafka assets today? We're not talking about the deployment itself, but let us know. That poll should be coming in now. And while we're doing that, we can introduce the speakers. So very delighted to be hosting Julian today. So Julian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Julien, I'm from France, and I'm the product manager on console since last year. And before that, I was a technical expert on Kafka ecosystem, dealing with a large number of Kafka clusters.
Very nice. And I'm James. I'm director of product here. I've been working in enterprise data management, building data products for the last 7 or 8 years. So very excited to host Julian. Like I said, he's the PM for console. So if you are using console, he is your man. You have him in front of you today if you want to give him any feedback. And let's get into it. So quick recap. This is the Conduktor ecosystem. We're going to get straight into the content. So we're going to be very quick here. But this is how it looks today. If you didn't know, Conduktor do not just provide a UI, the console. We do actually provide an extensible Kafka proxy as well. this sits between your client applications and Kafka, no matter which Kafka vendor you are using. How we explain this to customers is the console is here to facilitate the needs for your users who need a window into Kafka for troubleshooting, visualizing the data, performing Kafka operations, whereas the gateway sits between your applications and Kafka and is therefore kind of on the critical path. So if you need to encrypt the data in Kafka itself, then gateway is going to be the thing that helps you out. Equally, if you need to achieve a multi-tenant isolated environment or multi-tenant isolation, then you can do that through cluster virtualization in the gateway itself. But today we're going to focus on the right side. We're talking about console, we're talking about GitOps, we're talking about access management. So that's where we're going to focus. So how does this begin? So as I said, thinking back to that maturity curve, let's assume I'm a platform administrator and we started on the left side of that maturity curve. At the beginning, the scope is small. We just want to get our first project up and running, and we're not using Kafka with any additional tooling. We're just using the CLI, Kafka Console Consumer, Kafka Console Producer, etc. But in doing so, we start to notice some trends. We notice we're lacking good visibility into Kafka. Some of the team are not so familiar with Kafka, and they're having difficulties. They're overwhelmed by the multitude of APIs and CLIs. And ultimately, we find that Kafka is becoming a bit of a burden on our productivity. And we really want to just focus on the applications we're building. So at this stage, my question, Julian, is, what's out there? What do you have for me? Do we have a solution to this?
Yes, James. As a matter of fact, do you see a light switch on the side? Yes. Please light switch this on. Aha. So this is console. So if you are not familiar with console, I suggest you go directly right now to Conduktor.io, where you will find a way to deploy console on your machine. Give it a try. It's interesting. So you can do everything you need. It's really a window to your Kafka system. So you can create topic, browse the content, create messages, put messages, browse your schema registry, manage your consumer group, and everything Kafka related. Kafka Connect, service account, everything which you need for Kafka on your day-to-day is in console.
It's looking a bit bright, but I believe you have a dark mode as well. Yeah. You've got me covered as well. Yes. Very smart. So yes, if you haven't seen the console before, this is just adding some context. We're going to get to the GitOps piece.
So James, you went into Conduktor.io, you deployed console. How are you feeling now?
I'm good. My developer productivity has increased. We've got them the tooling they need. They're equipped. The console is deployed, either Docker, Kubernetes, and my users are happy and my life is good. However, after a while, I start to get requests that I haven't seen before. I have a request to onboard the payments team, but I start to realize the payments team are processing sensitive data, and this isn't something that I've come across before. So I start to wonder, how can we restrict access to this data? Julian, is there a solution for me?
Yes, James. So it's quite simple. We have finally deployed our latest revision of our permission model in console. So I'm going to demonstrate using the UI how far you can get to manage the access on your teams. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And here I am in console. So this is the product console. You can browse your topics and such. I'm going into the admin aspect of it. And in the users and group tab, you can see that you have some groups. I'm going to create a new group. So that would be the payment team. And for this team, I'm going in the resource tab. And for the member, obviously, you can manage the member within your payments team. By the way, if you connected your SSO, whether it be LDAP or IDC, you can do external group mapping so that it pulls the groups automatically and then the member get added automatically. For our need, we are going to go in the resource tab, and there we can add whatever permission we want on few selected resources. So in that case, it's about topics. So I'm going to say payment minus whatever. And I want to create a permission, let's say viewer. So as you can see right now, I have a new line that tells me that members of this group are allowed through console on the resources payment minus anything on the cluster which is local, the cluster name is local, the following permission. So everything that you can think of is there. So I'm going to save, and now people from this group can get access to those topics. Obviously, I'm going to switch to another group to show you the whole extent of our permission model in console. So for topics, you can do everything regarding the config, consume, produce, create topic, delete, empty, manage the partition. But also consumer group, you can view the consumer group, you can reset the offset. On subject, so I'm speaking about Confluent-like schema registry or the Glue one from AWS. You can view the schema, edit the compatibility, create new version, and delete schema. Kafka Connect, a bit more complicated, but I think with this, we cover everything you might ever need by being able to view the status, restart some task, do some pause, deploy or edit the configuration. And finally, on the cluster side of things, you have the ACL and service account. So we are working on the service account at the moment. And all the broker aspect, where if you want to change the dynamic config or view the config. If I give you this and you create your groups and then you add the members and so on and so forth, James, are you happy with this?
I am. I mean, compared to where we were, Harold's back on the beach. He's drinking margaritas. He's got his security issue solved. And that means that he can provide controlled access to his users, to his groups, to different Kafka resources. So we've moved on from that initial stage of POC or first project into having deployed tooling with manually configured and quite extensible security. So our users are happy and life is good. But of course, as the way things goes, it doesn't last forever. And after a while, Harold, the platform administrator, is back in having a problem. Kafka's gained more and more traction inside our organization, and the requests are coming into Harold daily. And that means that he finds himself becoming a bottleneck to application development. He finds that people are telling him he's slow, it's taking too long to be onboarded. Sorry, just got a fire alarm. And so again, we're in this situation. So Julian, once again, is there another way where we can get around Harold becoming such a bottleneck?
Yes, so I believe it's time to automate a little bit. So how would you feel doing a little bit of coding and using some APIs to synchronize or to execute actions on console? We have deployed probably in previous release the console APIs. Console APIs are two-sided things. You have the APIs to manage the console aspect, the console resources. So for example, using the APIs right now, you can already manage the clusters that you define in console. You can import certificates. And what is important right now today is you can manage group and permission totally using public API or console API on our product. To be clear, it's not totally where we want to go because what comes next and what we are going to release, I think, this month is, or the next month, now it's September. In September is API on the Kafka resources. So not only you will be able to create users and permission on things that relate to console, but now you will also be able to create service account on your Kafka system or manage the ACLs on your Kafka system. By the way, we will support Confluent and Haven because there are some particularities, but we also support the standard Kafka ACLs using the Conduktor APIs. So next slide, please. This is, so here what I want to show you is that if I give you Conduktor APIs, now we can do something very interesting. We can start thinking about some kind of GitOps process to manage how you deal with the requests that coming from the different teams. So before that, you were doing manually, adding a group, adding the permission to this group. And now maybe you can move into a more GitOps way by having some kind of desired state somewhere in Git. And then you need to have some kind of reconciler. So to be clear, Conduktor is not the reconciler yet. Conduktor is the thing which you act on with the console API. So you would need to implement a little bit of coding just to maybe check the state of Git, compare it with console, and then apply the delta, create the new group, or delete the obsolete group, or edit the permissions. And all of this, you would do it through the Conduktor APIs. This is the very beginning, the very building block of the GitOps process. And clearly, we are considering going a step further. And I believe, James, we have a poll right now.
We do indeed. So I guess to that point on the bottom right of the screen, like we're considering the future here, like in terms of what people need, Terraform, for example, or something similar to Terraform. So the poll you'll be seeing there is really just to help us understand how you would like to leverage the console API. So I think, Julian, as you said, what you're going to demonstrate for the reconciliation demo here is just using the raw API with some custom code. But if you would prefer to interact with it using a Terraform, Pulumi, Kubernetes operator, or something else, please give us the feedback. Let us know in the chat how you plan to use this. And while we're doing that, Julian, maybe we can segue into the demo itself.
Yes. Can you go back to the previous slide with the GitOps method? Just 1 second. So what I'm going to demonstrate here is a reconciler, which I've coded using some Java simple development that takes a YAML into the desired state in Git. And as soon as there's a commit on the master of my Git project, it's going to look at the YAML, parse it, compare it with what's available in Conduktor using some get API, and then identify a delta and apply the differences. So if there's a change, it will create a group or delete a group, and so on. And this is a way to use the Conduktor API. So I'm going to share my screen now.
While you're getting set up, Julian, what do you think was the most popular answer about the console API?
I would hope Terraform, or tell me.
It's a tie. It's a tie on custom code. Actually, now Terraform is in the lead. Terraform got the most votes, followed by the raw API. Somebody wants a Kubernetes operator, so if you do, maybe you could share how you intend to use that.
On top of the raw API, maybe if people are interested, maybe tell us which language do you use? Would you need a SDK or something like this? Or would you be fine with the Open API specification? What do you think you need from us? Because we are there to help you. Okay, so quick summary of our APIs. We have a dedicated section in the admin tab with API key, where you can just generate an API key. You have a place to go to some redoc.ly that is going to show you the API specification, where you can see all the endpoints that we provide. Everything is there. And just to give you some example, I have it set up on my environment, and I'm asking for well, you know what, I can just do this. I will ask for all the groups. And as you can see, I will get admin group, project A, project B, and payments team, which corresponds precisely to what I have here, right? And then I can go deeper and ask for the permission associated to the team A, and then I ask for it. And what I get is really the ACLs, or the permission that come from the system that we implemented. So on the clusters, on the Kafka Connect, we can see everything which I've shown you earlier. Now, how can I make use and interesting use of this? Well, I've put myself in the shoes of a central team, And guess what? As a central team, you might have a place where you want to define the structure of each of your team. So why not define, so this is my own kind of naming convention, but why not define some objects that contains teams? So this is team A, and then associated to it each of the permission that I want to see for them. So for example, team A, I want them to be able to access all the topics that start with team A in prefix mode. Same for group, team A. Same for Kafka Connect, and so on and so on. And I can change information. So for example, here you can see that the LDAP group for this team is linked to LDAP team A ops 2, which is absolutely corresponding to this. And now if I want, I can commit a change on this guy. So obviously you should do it through a PR and not directly on the master, but this is your own process. Do whatever you want. This is going to trigger some action. So again, I have a simple CI behind the scenes that takes the information from the change and execute. It just executes the discrepancy and it makes the changes where it's necessary. So for example, here we can see that team A got some changes applied. Okay, sorry about this. Team A got some changes applied. So normally, if I go back here, I should see the number 2 which disappeared, which correspond exactly to the change that I've made. So now, how can you make it out of a process? So I guess the simplest way would be to have some kind of pull request system where your project teams would come in and ask for things. So for example, here I have the example of a team that come in and request for a new group with some permission. And now your role is a little bit different. You don't get to go into console, create resources, add the things. Now you are just here, looking at the thing, confirming, asking for questions, doing some review. Are you sure? And so on, up until the point where you validate. And upon validation, okay, sorry, that's not how we validate. Here. And upon validation, the resource are going to be stored in the Git. And because of the GitHub action that we've seen earlier, is going to process and make the required group that has been requested. And now your source of truth is stored in Git. So this is safe, like you can lose console or whatever, you can lose the database, you still keep your source of truth and you can maintain the state with console. But not only console, maybe you have some other product where you would like to maintain the state with, and now you can do this with Conduktor. So James, if I give you this, are you happy?
Well, I am happy. I'm back on the beach. I'm drinking margaritas. I think what Julian just showed, it shows how to move from that manual configuration or manual influx of requests that you're dealing with into a more programmatic approach whereby the requests coming in are structured, they're through PRs. It's taking away a lot of that responsibility from that central platform team or that central ops person. And of course, they're testable as well. So we've shifted a gear from where we were. We're no longer talking about manual security enabled through this GitOps approach. We're talking about automation. So once again, users are happy, life is good. But as is often the way, things never last. And this is where we want to talk about the last piece we alluded to at the start of the webinar. So Kafka is everywhere. It's a great sign of the adoption in my company, but it means PRs are flying in from everywhere. And as Harold, I start to question my own role. I don't have the business context behind each of these requests. In fact, I don't even know who some of these people are, where these requests are coming from. So how could I possibly be a legitimate channel for validating such requests? I'm chasing people. I'm trying to find out if they should be allowed this access, and I'm wasting time. And once again, we're back in a sticky situation. So the question comes back, Julian, can we do anything about it?
So as a matter of fact, we are exactly to the experience of my previous company, where I went up to that point where I was the single man in the middle, validating all the requests. And I can tell you, you don't understand anything anymore because you have so many project teams coming to you and asking for things. You don't even know who to contact, like they're asking for stuff, but you don't know who it is and such like this. So let's take the subject a little bit differently. Let's switch our mindset for a second. What if instead of having a central authority, you know, the Kafka platform administrator, be granting permission on resources to group of people, what if instead we completely switch the thing into giving ownership to project teams? Ownership is the keyword here because it starts to bring an interesting point. If we have ownership and on top of that, we add a little bit of governance, I'm going to go a little bit into the details of what kind of governance rule we can put. Now we unlock a lot of interesting features. So let's say, for example, that now, instead of saying group A can do whatever they want on a topic prefixed by whatever group A minus anything, I say that the team A or the project A is full owner of resources that starts with group A. But I also put in place some governance rules like naming convention, parameter validation. Think about it. What is your role as a platform administrator? Your role is to maybe guarantee that your Kafka stays up and running even when you are not there. So how would you do that? Maybe by preventing people to create topic with an absurd amount of partition. What if you could automate those validation by still giving full autonomy to your project team? Those are governance rules. Once you do that, the three things that I've put in this slide are the three first key enablers. You can now delegate permission. As a platform administrator, you are not anymore on the critical path when it comes to project team wanting to share access between each other. So now team A can give access to a topic to team B in full autonomy. Team organization, that's a very interesting unlock. Your own project, say team A, might be consisting of multiple type of roles, but maybe you have someone from the support, which is only allowed stuff like a restarting Kafka Connect task. Maybe you have DevOps, which can create topics, delete topics, and so on. And maybe you have developers who can consume into their own topics and produce into those topics in dev, but maybe not in prod. All of this organization, you can now make it yourself with this kind of process. You derive this model, which is based on your project team, your way, and you don't have to go through some kind of central authority to create some kind of subgroups and stuff like this. And the last one is the self-serve. So that's the one I started with, actually. If we have some good governance rules defined by the central authority, then there is no more a need to have some kind of formal validation step, because now all the rules can be enforced. I'm thinking about safeguarding using the gateway. I'm thinking about some kind of restriction of the number of topics, number of partition, or even the configuration. As a real-life example, on Kafka Connect, when you deploy your JDBC sync or a JDBC source, I don't know, it's very important to put a configuration element that's the DB.time zone. If you don't put that, you will have some failure on the time zone. You will have mismatch on the time zone. As a platform administrator, you can give this as a best practice, put it somewhere in a document, or maybe you can just put a governance rule to enforce that whenever someone deploys a Kafka Connect, then the DB.time zone is better set or it will fail. This is the kind of thing we can do if we switch our mindset to this ownership model.
Julian, before we get into the demo, I'm interested from your experience, like obviously this sounds great on the surface, but like, are there any like challenges or disadvantages of switching our mindset and moving away from that kind of central platform team, central point of ownership?
It's only positive. There's I think the earlier you do it, the better, because there's always the kind of migration path that you have to consider by going from kind of airback into ownership. But the sooner you do it, the better. To be honest, let's be clear about something. I don't have a product yet. Whatever we are presenting here is a vision. It's something that we have in mind for a long time, but we don't have an actual product for this. And this is something where we want to collect some feedback, get some interest. We know this is important. We know this is what we want to do. And having some feedback is going to help us make it sooner rather than later. Hello, Jean-Louis, welcome.
Hello, Julien. Hello, James. I just wanted to interfere here because I think there is a taboo as geeks. And the taboo is that in my previous life, when I was working at Confluent and helping all sorts of customers to be successful with Kafka, this question was there all the time. And what I realized is that every time the conversation started with, we would like to provide more autonomy, it ended up as a tactical win with, we want GitOps because it became an industry standard. And it's fun. But after a certain size, and you saw it, Julien, just fun fact, Julien, you were my customer, and I was telling you at the beginning, you might hit this problem. You should not start with this, if you remember. And it's funny because ultimately, once load is going to occur and once projects are going to be onboarded, the central team becomes overwhelmed and they need to rethink about who is supposed to validate, who is supposed to be part of this PR. And as such, it can result in situation where the central team might blindly approve, because when you have just 1 or 2 requests per week, it's fine. But when you get hundreds, I remember, Julien, you got 70 plus clusters. I remember you had many projects in each of them. So at some point, I guess you must have been in a position of having huge chunks of things to review and just blindly approve because, I don't know, someone was pretty new and they put crap in the in the process. So ultimately, what is your opinion if you retrospect into this? What is the takeaway for you when you look at how many time you have probably wasted yourself reviewing or not reviewing, or made projects feel about the time for you to review all of those?
It's much better with full autonomy on project team. There is no debate on this. And I have yet to see some big issue with this model. After, I think it has 2 years of existence now in my previous company, and it's still showing strong interest and no negative feedback.
And the mindset, if I remember your words at that time, you said, do I want to be involved every time a project wants to access the data of someone else, times the number of clusters, times the number of projects? Hell no. I need to find a solution to give this autonomy back to the project because they are the one that should take this responsibility, right?
Yeah. Everybody wins because as a platform admin, I can focus on what's more important, and the project team, they don't depend on me. There were some deployment on Sundays. So do I want to be there on Sundays to help my project team? No, absolutely not.
And in fact, you did that because there was a fundamental problem initially. People can make mistakes, and people can make mistakes. And when they were asking too much topics, these connectors or this whatever that was not approved, it might have an impact on the assistance you were providing or on the capacity planning. And that's where potentially, if we think about this ownership model and putting constraint, what you call governance rules, we can put people on a path where they can be on a self-service without talking to a human in a given context.
Cool. So let's move on. Let's have a look at what this actually looks like, right? Because this is the theory, but in terms of how it actually materializes today and what we can provide by way of topic as a service, Julien, I think you're still going to give us a quick demo of this.
So today, the mindset switch is already possible in console. Now you just have to go to topic as a service. Again, the name doesn't make any sense. We are going to change it eventually, but you can create the concept of application. See application more as a shell that encompasses a lot of things. And it starts with, obviously, a name, a prefix on the Kafka resources, and the owner. That's the important aspect, the ownership. So here we will say it's some kind of group in console, a group of people. Once you have created an application, now you can create your topics. You can still review your ownership. You can manage your internal organization. So this one is empty, but you can add groups of people, create your own internal teams, and give them specific accesses on the owned resources. So that's very interesting. And now you can get access on topics that you do not own. So in this example, I have team B, that requested access to topic from team A. And guess what? Team A, so obviously here I'm admin, so I can see both applications, but you have to imagine that members of team A can go there, look at the access request, and review that someone from team B requested the read access on the topic team A
second topic. Yeah.
So I can review, ask for details, and then accept or reject the thing. And as soon as I accept it, it's doing two things. Members of team A, or actually on team B, sorry, in that scenario, now have, it should refresh well, please. Okay, it's external. So members of team B can now access those two topics. I did two requests. I'm sorry about this. The request was this one. So now I can access this topic in console, but if ever my application was configured with a service account, it created the ACL on the service account side too, on the Kafka side. So that's the mindset shift that I'm speaking about.
So the mindset shift is not about how this can be done, but mainly about who needs to take the action, who needs to be empowered. And by doing this, you are switching your mindset of being a bottleneck from being an enabler.
Absolutely. The central bottleneck goes, you've enabled self-service. Harold's back focusing on building frameworks for developers, which is what he should have been doing. And the autonomy that application teams have now means, as I think Joseph pointed out, it's decentralized. There's no need for this PR validator, supreme overlord who has to spend his days approving or rejecting things he doesn't have the full context for. So definitely an interesting or different way of looking at it. I think we have one more poll, having just actually touched upon that stuff, which I'm going to put in as we answer some of the questions, because it's relevant to what we've just shown, which is if you are using security, like how painful today is it for you to get access to another team's topics? Is it something that resonates with you? And I think while we're doing that, to Lionel's point in the chat, where do you apply the rules? At the gateway level or on the console? Either of you want to take that one?
Yeah, I will. The right answer will be both. The current answer is gateway, because right now what I've shown you is just a beta version of something that we more have a vision rather than an actual working product. And the feedback that you give us is what will make us do the thing in which right order or not.
And the reason why it's in the gateway is because maybe you need to have a given approach that could scale. And maybe the answer is that one approach will not fit everyone in your organization. I can give this example of very large companies where they choose to start with infra as code, and it was working fine, and they find the right level of delegation of model until the moment where they had to onboard projects that were not familiar with that. and that struggle required help. And as such, they had to find alternatives way to onboard those less aware type of users. And if you think about it, either you need to implement this rule everywhere, or you need to enforce it at the protocol level, potentially in the gateway.
Perfect. If anyone has any further Q&A or any questions they want, then please chuck them in the chat, and we've got a couple of minutes, so happy to stick around and try to answer them. In the interim, if you do want to get started with Conduktor, you can come and book a tailored demo through Conduktor.io/contact. You can get started on the console for free. You can head over to Conduktor.io/get started, run the Docker Compose that will spin up the console, either with an embedded Red Panda or without, depending on how you want to evaluate the product. And so, yeah, we'll open the floor for a last chance. But Julian, Jean-Louis, if there's any last closing comments you wanted to add. Something from Joseph. So currently we try to do GitOps through Infra as code. It eases cross-environment creation also, and then it's defined at service level rather than through a UI. So kept in Git and the like. I'm not sure a purely UI approach is the right target, and I'm unsure how one could have been working together. Interesting.
I take this question. This is a great question.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we should go to one of the slides where I present all the APIs that we want to surface, and I'm pretty sure as soon as we start working on the, I think that's your answer, right? Like whatever you can do using the UI, I want you to be able to do it using our APIs anyway. So if ever you need to create an application, like the UI concept of application that I presented you, you just do it using API. Manage the team and the permission within the team using APIs. Everything should be able to be done using the console APIs and not just the UI.
Cool. And one last one from David. So does console have any functionality similar to cruise control, Julian? Is it something we'll work towards, including, for example, repartitioning, optimizing your clusters?
No.
Not today. Simple answer.
LLM, ChatGPT. That's an interesting question. Personally, I think it's a bit too hype yet, and we should wait a little bit because we don't know where the data is going. And because we are dealing with your data, I'm not so sure I want to do this.
Interesting to know in what way you would intend on using an LLM inside the console, Dimitri. But if that's it, then I want to thank you everybody for joining today. Hopefully it was useful to see the GitOps approach, the slightly different way of looking at governance and access management. I really appreciate everyone coming. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach any one of myself, Julian, Jean-Louis, via LinkedIn or directly via Conduktor. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice day.